Welcome to Celebrity Grave Hunting. Today's tip: bring extra socks and shoes. Welcome to Celebrity Grave Hunting. I am your host, Ryan. I am so excited that you came along on this adventure with me. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. So, we are on our way to Sharon Hill, Pennsylvania. We are going to Mount Laurel Cemetery. Sharon Hill is kind of an area of Philly, southern Philly, near the airport. We are going to be seeing two famous celebrities today. They did not work together. They did not know each other. The first one passed away before the other one, the second one, was even born. They, however, are both incredibly gifted singers, incredibly gifted African-American singers. And they both died tragically young. We are going to be visiting, chronologically, Bessie Smith. Now, who is Bessie Smith? She was born April 15th, 1894 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And she lived basically a life of poverty, begging for spare change on the street corners. She then progressed into singing for money on street corners for change. You know, you had to do it to get by. In 1912, she was hired as a dancer and chorus line, and she eventually became a singer in chorus lines. In 1913, she formed her own touring act and established a reputation throughout the South and began going up and down the East Coast. 1923 is when her recording career began, and that started at Columbia Records. Her first record, Downhearted Blues, instant hit. She rose to become the top theater attraction, the highest paid black entertainer of her era. Her music encouraged working class women to, embrace a right to think. She was progressive. She encouraged women to party and fulfill their sexual needs. She herself was bisexual, and you can find tinges of that in the songs that she sang. Her contemporaries compared her stage presence, in fact, to that of a Sunday preacher on the pulpit doing a sermon. The national press named her the Empress of the Blues. Many of her recordings were the best-selling records of their respective years. The song Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out is probably her most well-known, if not her most covered song. Unfortunately, most Americans in the 1930s, the Great Depression really dried up her career. Her records dried out, and she started playing small clubs again. And September 26, 1937, she was involved in a car crash en route to Missouri. There are urban legends about what happened, but what did happen, according to the first person that showed up on the scene, who also happened to be a doctor that gave a detailed interview of this in the 1970s. Bessie Smith was riding in the passenger seat of the car being driven by the man that she was with at the time. Either her arm was hanging out of the side of the open window or it was propped up, but she was apparently sleeping. It was late at night after a gig, and the driver misjudged a truck in front of them and swerved, but sideswiped the passenger side. Bessie, the urban legend was her arm was removed during the accident. That's not true. It was still attached, barely. She did make it to a hospital, contradicting urban legend. She did get to the hospital. She was unconscious for all this. Her arm was amputated underneath the elbow, and she passed away the next morning. Apparently severe blood loss. She was 43 years of age, and it was reported that 10,000 people came by to mourn her coffin at the viewing, right over here in Philadelphia where we're going. Her grave, unfortunately, remained unmarked for 30 years. She had a kind of a jerk of a husband in the 1920s, and they never divorced. Though they did separate, they never divorced. And apparently whenever money was pulled together to get a headstone, he would swipe the money. But Janis Joplin idolized Bessie Smith, and Janis Joplin actually paid for Bessie Smith to have a tombstone erected on August 7th, 1970, 33 years after she died. So we are going to visit her, the Empress of the Blues, buried here in Philadelphia. Not her birth town, but she moved here in the 1920s, and this was her home base from there on out. And we are also going to be paying our respects to the great Tammi Terrell. Though her tombstone will say Thomasina Montgomery, nowhere on her tombstone will it actually have her stage name, Tammi Terrell. So Thomasina Montgomery was born April 25th in 1945 here in Philadelphia. Her nickname was Tommy, and then that became Tammi, and then Tammi Terrell. Raised in Philadelphia, discovered singing at the age of 15 and signed by Luther Dixon. By 1961, she began singing backup for James Brown at the age of 17. At a club performance in Detroit, she was spotted by Motown founder Berry Gordy and signed her to sing for Motown on her 20th birthday. In 1967, she recorded a duet with Marvin Gaye, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. And that was an international hit. I can't stress how instant of a star she became overnight. That was the top of the charts when there were actually charts that mattered. It was on the R&B charts, it was on the rock charts, it was on the pop charts. I mean, that was a huge hit. It was in the movie Galaxy Quest a couple years ago. It's a song that keeps getting rediscovered. It's a song that I like to say is in the air. Even if you didn't know it when I said Ain't No Mountain High Enough, it probably did start playing in the back of your head. So that is probably her most well-known song. Then followed up with more duets with the great Marvin Gaye, like Your Precious Love and Ain't Nothing But the Real Thing. October 1967 at a concert in Virginia, she collapsed on stage in Marvin Gaye's arms, and doctors diagnosed her with a malignant brain tumor on the right side of her brain. Multiple surgeries followed, and it left her weak, losing her hair and having to use a wheelchair, ultimately dying of brain cancer on March 16, 1970 at the age of 24. Telling her story, it would be remiss of me if I did not mention she was the victim of spousal abuse of both James Brown and David Ruffin from the Temptations. Both had relationships with her that left her bruised and battered, that she spoke of later. And she was raped as a young girl at the age of 14 and started having migraine attacks. So she was a brave woman, and if you know anybody that happens to be victim to that, please report it. Unfortunately, nobody reported it back then, and that was a problem of the times. but she lived a short life, but she certainly left an impact. So let's go say we don't forget you. I do want to apologize. This video I'm shooting a little bit later than I intended. All the days that I had planned to film earlier, it was pretty miserable and raining. In fact, it just rained yesterday, so that's why you got to bring an extra pair of shoes and socks, because if you think about it, a cemetery is just a big field. So it can get muddy, it can get, high grass, so why be miserable with wet feet on your drive home? We are here at the Mount Laurel Cemetery in Sharon Hill, Pennsylvania. We are first going to pay our respects to Bessie Smith. The easiest way to find Bessie Smith, she is buried in Section C. The cemetery is good enough to have these large markers all throughout the various sections. Alright. So when you come to the B, F, and C intersection, look inward to Section C. And there's going to be two precarious bushes that have grown a little bit out of hand. Bessie is right in front of that. So let's go say hello. It's wild to think that this tombstone was paid for by Janis Joplin a little bit more than a month before she herself passed away. But I'm reminded that probably all these divots may very well be unmarked graves. So watch your step. Two overgrowing shrubs. Bessie Smith, 1895 to 1937, the greatest blues singer in the world, will never stop singing. Legend in life, not forgotten in death. Now to find Tammi Terrell, you could walk, but it's easier to drive. To find the grave of Tammi Terrell, simply come to the cemetery office, which is located at the very front gate, the big white building, can't miss it. And she is buried in Section A, which is right next to it. She's all the way in the back row, right near the highway there, about fourth grave from that tree. So let us go say hello. Now you will not be looking for Tammi Terrell. You'll have to be looking for Thomasina Montgomery. She is sharing a plot with her parents as well. Apologies for the traffic. Thomasina Montgomery, Tammi Terrell, 1945 to 1970. Her father and her mother. Unfortunately, they both had to bury their daughter. But what a life she had, and what a legacy she continues to have. Legend in life, not forgotten in death. Please like and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on our next adventure.